Checking in. How are you? I am Ryan McGough, the bodybuilding businessman and entrepreneur. I am coming at you today with some telecom and government contracting and low voltage in business in general. Information, updates, and where we're at, where we're trying to go. Some big things have happened. I haven't put much out in terms of content for either business or bodybuilding or real estate. But we have had some great updates, some great partnerships, huge opportunities, some good wins. And it's always good to talk about those things and come back from a level of reflection. I have been traveling. We were in Brazil for a few months. We were getting this house done here. So this is finally good to have a microphone back in my office again and all of that stuff that really just helps with the routine. If you want to talk about business or anything that's really going to test your patience, your level of will, your willpower, your level of vision in envisioning your success, like business does when you have your own business, you really have to talk about mindset and you have to talk about these things too. So routine is one of the biggest things, and it always has been. And actually, believe it or not, it's why I started bodybuilding in the first place. I had always loved the gym. I had always power lifted. I had played sports. I played football in high school, tore my ACL in high school, so I didn't get much further than that. I could have pushed past it, but I didn't. But when it came to sports and the gym, I loved it. I enjoyed it. I did it consistently for years, but there was no end result. There was no push, no drive for anything other than just working out. And what I ended up doing is when I started my business, I read Atomic Habits, and it's a great book if you haven't read it. And it talked about stacking habits. So I was like, you know what? I'm going after contracts. I'm really aggressive in sales because that's the beginning of any successful business. We have to put some projects on the map. So I had to become a really good salesman, and I read a book, You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bicycle, at a seminar. So I was reading these two books around the time that I started business. One was teaching me about sales, which is super important if you're going to start your business. And one was teaching me about habits. And so I made this commitment that I was also going to step on stage and do something that I had always wanted to do. And it was going to allow me to eat right, to get up and do fasted cardio, to have a really healthy nutritional diet for the majority of it. The end of it, is a lot of cutting certain things out. But I try to stay consistent in two things, in both the diet aspect of it and also in the nutrient aspect of it. See, there's always those two sides, because one's going to show how your body forms with proteins, fats, and carbs. The other one is going to, going to put the levels of amino acids, of vitamins, of all of these other things that we very strongly need, our brains especially too. And so the mixture of both of those, I was consistent on throughout the course of the bodybuilding. So also what I would do is I would get up, do fasted cardio, and then I would go to the gym. Then I would get a workout in. Or go to eat first and go to the gym. And then after the gym, I would set up this routine, this habit that I was going to make sales calls with the fire beneath me of, excitement from the gym and endorphins and all of that, dopamine running. I was going to then get my ass handed to me on the phones, and which I hate to do. I do not like to do it. So I had this level of stacking the habit that was the least, my least favorite. And I would do that when I would get that rush of excitement from the gym. So those were some of the things that really helped me into business and helped me starting out in business. So it's great to do those things. I still do those things today. My routines are very important. So being off my routine for a while was really hard. It was really challenging for a little while. I didn't have that, here's what I do next, that consistency of moving to the next thing. But in the same light of that, we were able to find a house at a discount, use our skills to renovate it, all of those things. So to have the mic back, to have the desktop back, is really important to me, and it is really good to have a new space, a new place, a new look. You know, I got my Steelers gear and I set my clock up there. My books are going to go under that because they're extremely important to me, and I like to read and think and get into a good vibe right here in this space here. So it's very important to me to have those things too. So now on to the telecom side of things. Once we talk about just starting the business and just putting it all out there and burning those bridges and saying, I'm doing this, this is what it is for me, this is my life, this is the things that I enjoy. I'm going to go compete, I'm going to go drive myself and push myself to go succeed, and without any fallbacks, without any crutches, any of that. And so once we do that, then it's about kind of strategy and where are we going to go and what are we going to do. A lot of the beginning parts, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, a lot of the beginning parts is definitely just getting contracts, building relationships. You know, a lot of those I didn't enjoy those type of contracts because they're not where we wanted to be as a business. They were just what JV partnership contracts we could get that gave us experience, that gave us, you know, past project document that we could go bid on. So the huge thing of what's happening and going on now is we've gone and kind of took a step back for a little while during these months that I was kind of traveling and all of that and changing and moving. I thought it would be a really good time to go for the strategy of what we wanted to do, which is to be the prime contractor. It's not easy to go from being a sub to a prime because you kind of have this list of documentation or this list of projects that is very small that you provided as a company, and to go out and have these big ones. Of course, any company is going to say, well, of course we want to see you've done this successfully for years. And so and I understand that completely on them. We do that all the time where we bring somebody in because we just have a little bit of reserves left on the project, or you know, we have to cut some costs to win the project. I totally understand that and what that's like, what you get a lot of times when you go for somebody who's new. You can get an all-star, right? It's like the thing that just happened when you see my Steelers stuff there, the draft, right? You can get an all-star and it's cheaper, and there's a lot of, right? You can go pick that person. You get your, you know, 6, 7 picks, whatever the case may be. And you go out and pick that person, and they could be an all-star. You could get a Patrick Mahomes, right? That right out of the gate is crushing it. You could also get, you know, most of what happens, which is people don't pan out to be what they were expected to become. They don't become that, and so your draft picks a lot of times don't even make it to throughout the team, right? With my Steelers, with Kenny Pickett, that was the scenario. It didn't pan out in 2 years. He hadn't evolved enough, right, to win consistently and become, in a short period of time, that person that they needed him to become. So I understand that side of things. I do. I really understand that aspect of being new in the industry. So I knew it was going to be a step back in terms of income that we were going to get coming in. And that was okay because in the first year, the telecom side had a consistent pipeline of subcontracts from previous people that I had worked with in the past. So that pipeline was pretty full. And I imagine most people, when you start your company, when you go out and do that, you are going to start out with that type of thing, right? You're going to have that contact list in your phone. You're going to have that email list of whatever you've built some relationships with some of those people. I'm sure you're going to contact those first. I understand we're probably not supposed to do that. I do, but I also understand you're going to start with what you know and what you have already in your database. And those are going to be people that you probably built relationships with. So I understand that's the normal, fluid, organic company starting when you've been in that industry, right? This isn't a taking a bunch of capital and deploying some company that's just based off a theory and a business model, right? This is more, I'm in the industry, I've already done this. How do I take that next step and get to the next level? I want to start a company. I know I'm successful. I believe I can do this better than my current company does it, right? And that agitation and frustration of sitting there doing it time and time again for someone else and putting money in their pocket. Drop my pen. Yeah, that's what we're talking about here, right? And moving towards that. So that's what I did. I started it organically. I know the industry. I've been in it. I'm a technical owner, right? I know the schemes. I know the numbers. I know we talk about cellular, low voltage, cellular networks. I commission and program my own systems, my own 5G networks, repeaters, all of that. So I've been very blessed to be in every single part of the industry that I could design a system, right? I'm not an engineer, but I can send it over knowing what components I want, knowing what system I want to build. I can send that out to my engineers and they can give me a design, right? I can build that design with my own hands, literally. I can then test that design, test the components within that infrastructure. I can do submittals and get permits and all of those things. I can, once that's tested, I can commission, configure, program, take a test, get certified on certain equipment. So for me, it was very organic that I started my own company because there's not many people that have that much experience doing every single thing in the industry. So it was a big blessing for me that I got put in all those places. And so now it was time to put it to the test when I started. So now what we're doing, and of course, like I mentioned, that first contacts, those first contacts are going to be the people in your network. You see what you can get. We shake the tree, just keep calling, keep reaching out. But we do have bigger dreams, bigger goals. We do want to be the point of contact, right? We do believe in more. It's always about growing. What are we doing to expand the industry of low voltage and cellular? And there's too many cool things out there that we can mix into our low voltage networks. I mean, the future, you can just imagine, right? Everything had wires at one point, headphones, all of that. It's all wireless. There's different packet switching, there's Bluetooth, there's Wi-Fi, there's all these cool things. I can guarantee you there's going to be a whole ecosystem of wireless networks, wireless communication, wireless data transmission, layers upon layers, robotics layers, communications layers, building, modulation layer. There's going to be so many different things within this ecosystem of wireless networks that all have to communicate, not connect to, secure themselves from. And there really is, if you think about in our lifetime where we're at now and where we're going to go, there's going to be some really cool things. My imagination, my thoughts, that everything is going to be a mesh network, right? A building is a mesh network within a city, is within a mesh network that connects to rural. We have a mixture of wireless connections and wired fiber connections to just extend and keep expanding broadband to cover every single space, to bridge that gap, right? Everything has an antenna. Building materials will be built with antennas within them, right? I mean, so you can just run your imagination through, right? And if you look on a map, right, there's like a honeycomb structure, right, to built within, closer to the signal, to further out, and what and how can you get a wireless connection point, a repeater, right, to within two areas, and just keep expanding outward without keeping the densification of antennas and towers and those types of things. So to really be able to have that mesh network that is to some degree, not polluting the environment and the beautiful architectures of cities, which I know and I love because I also flip houses and do the real estate side of things. So to me, that's also a very important thing too. So how do we get both of those things together? And I love what Elon Musk is doing with this mesh network of satellites in the sky that builds this map of coverage to the entire world, right? So how do we connect what's going on up there to what's going on down here and do a similar thing in terms of connectivity of a mesh network type of thing that's not anchored and just right there as a tower is. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff. So we have these dreams, we have these ambitions as to where we want to be. And so being a sub is not going to get us there. Now, I understand sometimes we have to do what we have to do to get those contracts and those networks and all of that signed, which is awesome. And we live another day, as I like to say. And, but what happened recently is that we took a step back and we went and we're just going to bid. We're going to run numbers. We're doing government stuff. We're looking at building relationships with some bigger GCs and some of those other companies, right? And still we're smaller, right? So we have a very remote workforce, a very lean workforce. We've done big projects with very lean teams. So when they ask like, oh, how many people's in your company? What kind of stuff? We're going to be like, oh, like 4 or 5 people. And then we just use usually remote labor, or we'll get boots on the ground from that area, which allows us from a very lean team to build across the United States, but also to have a lot more remote employees and contract labor, if you will, too. So at the same time, we like to manage crews of other people to be that general contractor type for the low voltage industry. So to hire one company for this type, to hire one for that type. So the point I'm making is we took that step back. We had goals. So we had to always continue with our path towards that goal, even if it meant stepping back and kind of losing some of the subcontracting relationships that we were going to have to then go and strategically build some new ones. The first year, as I mentioned, was okay to do that because we had our good contracts coming from the telecom side, and our real estate side was a little slower. Now it's totally flopped, and our telecom side was a little slower, and our real estate side, we have 3 to 5 flips going on per quarter, and we're building some dedicated funding sources and doing some strategic things to get ourselves to be able to just continue a pipeline of multiple flips per quarter. So now our real estate side is almost, in a sense, funding our telecom side. So that whole kind of structure had reversed. So it was a perfect time, because we saw the pipeline of how many flips were coming in, the perfect time to be able to take that step back and go after the general contracts and these bigger, if you will, multiple low voltage scope projects than the ones that we would have before. We would have like just an access control, just a speaker wiring system, just a cellular system, just a emergency responder radio system. Those things is what I mean when I say cellular. And now we're going after the whole low voltage package, right? So that's access controls, fiber and data wiring, rack and stack, type of equipment in the head end room. And so, of course, naturally, the first projects that we're probably going to kind of come across are going to be smaller, if you will, right? So the great news and the awesome thing is taking that step back for maybe 3 to 4 months while we kind of finished and closed out some of our other projects and we're deep into our real estate side. Now we finally won our first one, and it's a restaurant. So we have some point of sales, some access controls, some owner furnished Wi-Fi and camera systems, which we're going to wire them up, test all the wiring in there, build the racks for certain ones, and then the owner's going to provide and do their own on certain ones too. So a nice scope. What I like to say too is, like, if you have to, your company is built a certain way, it's advantageous to understand the terms that you want as a company to look for in the project that you win, right? If you're a lean company, you don't have access to a lot of capital, you're not going to want to like go out and win a big project that is, you're furnishing your own equipment of $100,000, right? At first, you probably are not going to have credit or the ability, the buying power to buy some of those things. So it's important to look at the contracts that you want as a company based on what your company's setup is, what you're able to take on, how you're able to achieve certain projects, and then you can write your own terms or look for your own terms specifically that's based on you as a company and what you can take on. And that's very important because even with one of the biggest contracts that we got in our first year was a cellular emergency responder radio and building radio, which is building communications, usually like a LMR radio or something of that nature, VHF or UHF, right? One of those types of radio systems. I think ours was VHF, so it's in the 400 band, 400 megahertz band of radio. And so when we got that, a company had failed to do what they were supposed to do. We were actually a sub of that company. We just had a few small, parts of that job. And so, long story short, they ended up being removed from the project, and we didn't have enough of a scope. So we just were saying, yeah, well, we just did these antennas. These antennas look fine. Or we just did this, rooftop antenna system, and this all looks fine as to what we would build. And so that company got removed. They came to us and said, all the equipment's here. Everything's on site. It looks like it's not connected right. There's certain things that have to be redone. There's alarms everywhere. There's problems. Can you come in and do it? And I'm like, absolutely, right? And we came in and we did it. Now, when that happens, a lot of times, like a lot of people were not confident in us, all of that. It's a long story, right? But we had to take that type of a project because we were only built to handle a project of that nature, even though it was a very large scale project. And it turned out to be like a 6-month, $150,000 project. And it was at times just me and like a couple teenage guys that were just on site doing this thing, and I was teaching them how to do it, and it was a miracle that we got that and we were able to handle it. We were built to take it on, but at the same time, had we won that total project in the beginning where we were going to furnish materials, I think I saw materials on that list, and it was like 100,000 in materials or something like that. So, that company that got it, whether or not whatever happened with them, they probably got like, 750,000, and equipment was 150,000. So their margins were very big. So you want to be able to handle and take on those because you get a margin on equipment, you get a margin on labor. There may be change orders, all kinds of stuff. I even had a few change orders in my contract. I think mine was originally like 100,000, and it turned out to be 150 just because we had a lot of change orders that went into the project. So you got to take on what you can take on. There has to be a time that if you are subcontracting, that you realize maybe we want to just be a sub, which is fine, or we want to be the prime on these and start designing and changing the industry from the inside, doing some cutting edge things, or getting on some research and development projects where now you start to kind of change the research and development aspect of what the entire industry is. So you need that power, you need that ability to be the prime, to be the expert at it, to show your expertise not only just on a project to project level, but on an industry knowledge level, which takes building the team of professionals in that industry, of cutting edge engineers that are thinking about the future of the industry, right? Building that all-star team. You need to be bigger, get bigger contracts, be the prime, get on the research and development side, and ultimately propel that industry forward from the front lines of it. And that's really the only way to change what currently is going on into something different, is to be on the forefront of the thinkers and the ones who are actually deciding what the next level of things are, right? Which is buildings going up, or government entities putting out and bidding, or even thinking of or creating what their city infrastructure wants to look like with wireless and wired and, all of that. So smart cities, in the forefront of the thought of developing those and what they look like. or engineers that are going to put the infrastructure and write up and draw up the infrastructure for buildings, right? They're the ones that are deciding what's going in certain buildings. And only when there's a need or a reason to start saying, well, why wouldn't we do the first wireless building? Or why wouldn't we put antennas inside of our infrastructure, inside of our the makeup of the outside of the building? They're not going to waste money on that stuff because they're building a building for residential or commercial or whatever it may be. They're building that building for a specific purpose with the budget in mind, and they're not just going to go out of their way to just design and put all these new things in that building. So those are the ones, the thinkers, the ones who are on the forefront of those things. And only when there's a need or where there's a reason to start putting those things into the building would they put them in. So all of it leads back to changed course because it was a part of where we wanted to be in the end. And even though some things are comfortable right here in front of our face, it's ultimately time for us to move past those and do and be who we want to be and be where we want to be by changing the course, which we were able to do because of another alternate stream of income that we have that allowed us to change course there. So that's ultimately what I wanted to talk about, and a huge grateful excitement and just ultimately proud of us and our whole team for accomplishing winning that bid. Even though it is small, even though it is a restaurant, it means that it's us. We are the first and the primary source of equipment, of the way it's going in, and we are ultimately on the line for it to be successful. But it gives us one more project in our book and one prime contract that we get to now utilize and use the momentum on to grow and build those next prime contracts too. So if you are thinking of starting your business, if you are in your business, maybe these will be helpful in terms of strategy. If you have a business and you're thinking about other streams of income, let me know how I can help you, what you need to get and accomplish those things. And maybe you're just way ahead of me, and also just checking in to refresh yourself on what it was like. But either way, please, if I've helped you at all whatsoever, like and subscribe to the channel, and please tell somebody else about this so I can help grow my audience and help more people. It is the only thing that is important to me. So thank you for listening. This is an episode of Telecom, Government, and Business with InteleCOM and InteleCOM Investments. And I am Ryan McGough, and I go by the bodybuilding businessman and entrepreneur. And I am about 15 weeks away from my next competition. So I'll hit you with one of these because I need to stay practicing. And I'm leaning out, keeping my size. So thank you guys. Peace.